Live from Waikanae Beach in New Zealand. Hope you're all having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Porch Light Letters podcast number 2408. How do I write about ancestors respectfully? I apologize for being on a couple of minutes late. I couldn't log in. Turns out my caps lock was on. And even when I unlocked it, I had to take a couple more attempts to get in. I was panicking just a little bit. So today we are talking about continuing our thing about telling the stories of our ancestors, even our own stories as well. There is a conference on at the moment called Roots Tech, and it's put on by Family History Search that's based out of Salt Lake City. And it is an incredible event. I have been watching some amazing videos because you can attend for free online. If you're in person, it costs you. And it's being held in Salt Lake City. It started today, Thursday, in the US, and it goes through till Saturday or Sunday. But they have a packed house there. They've got a lot of speakers on there. They have an itinerary for those just in person, and they have like a trade show there. But if you're online, they have videos that you can go. I actually started watching videos yesterday, and I got to see the story of the Gardner brothers, who are the Irish dancers. If you're not on TikTok or Instagram, you may not know who these guys are, but they are two brothers who basically dominate Irish dancing. They're always doing TikToks on and putting some music on and doing their Irish dancing to that music in whatever totally different locations around the world. And this time they go back home to Ireland, and we get to follow them back home to where their parents are. Their parents lived in the States for a while. The kids grew up in the US, even though they had the Irish roots. They learned Irish dancing to keep that part of the culture alive. One of them has 3 world championships. The other one has 2 world championships. And they also have an older sister who has won some awards as well for her Irish dancing. But they went and visited the parents in Galway, and then went down to some other place that I honestly cannot remember the name of. But they got there, and they were standing in front of the house with the thatch, still had the thatch roof on it, that their grandfather grew up in. And they got to learn the history of the area and the role that their grandfather and great-grandfather had played in that community during that time. And I thought, how cool is that? Here we are talking about writing stories to bring our ancestors alive. And we got to see it in a very different way in this video of the Gardner brothers actually being in the area, in the little village, in the little town and stuff that their grandparents and great-grandparents were in, and hearing the stories about them and the roles that they played in the community and things like that. And they got to do some really cool, there was like, it was like this breezeway, and on one side was the pub and the other side was the house, and he used to drive the car or the truck down through this breezeway where he could make deliveries and access his home and things like that. And it was just and whoever had done the research on this and put the narrative together for them to read had done an incredible job. And this is what we are teaching you. The other story I got to watch was Jose. Oh, what's Jose's? Hang on, I got to cheat. I have to go to my laptop here right now and go to Roots Tech. Oh, where did it go? Hang on. Here it is, Roots Tech. I also got to listen to the story of Jose Hernandez, and he shared his NASA journey with us and his migrant roots. And he would spend a certain number of months here in the US, and he was born in the US. And he said basically him and his siblings would depend whether they were born in the US or Mexico, because they used to flip backwards and forwards between the two countries often. So he was born in America and has American citizenship. His brother was, and depending on the time of the year, because it depends where they were doing the harvesting and things. But he applied 12 times to become an astronaut with NASA before he was finally accepted. And just talking about his heritage, the resilience of him growing up, having to grow up in 2 different cultures, and spending part of the year in one country, part of the year in the other country. And then the struggles that he went through to get accepted by NASA, because the first time he went to NASA, he was not a pilot. He hadn't got a degree or whatever it was that they required. So he just started working, and every time they opened up the applications, he would apply, and he would keep working at what he needed to do to qualify. And he just kept working at it. But he was talking about the showing his heritage, his resilience, and education that can launch incredible dreams. It was a phenomenal story. Again, he's taking his story, he's putting himself in it, he's letting, and this was an autobiography because he was telling his story. But towards the end, they also brought in the family search team, the slideshow on a iPad to show more of his story of his ancestors. So they got, not only did he live to achieve his dream and talked about that, but he also learned more about his heritage as well, his ancestry. So again, storytelling, it's all about the storytelling. Then they had a 17-year-old certified professional genealogist who has a Hispanic background. And he was really cool. He talked about how important it is to capture those important moments and turn your daily life into a living family story. So you're building the story as you live. And he talked about different ideas in that. Again, how to tell the story. Then I saw a really, really cool one. This was gravestone symbols A to Z, or Z, depending on which country you're in, is how you say that last letter. This was basically going through things like A was for anchor. And an anchor and these are symbols that you will see on gravestones. And so if you see an anchor, that person could have been a sailor. But the last hope a sailor had in a storm was to drop anchor and hang on. And so an anchor also became the symbol of hope. And I thought, that's a really cool story about how that happened. And so everything that they went through, they went through every letter of the alphabet and had something for every letter of the alphabet. And like B was for book. And that could mean that they were a scholar, a teacher, or an author. If it was an open book, it meant that somebody's life had been cut short. So it could have been on a child's grave. It could have been on a young adult's grave. Somebody who didn't live a full, average living life, if you want to put it that way. But these are just some of the presentations that I've been watching since last night. And because I'm online, I can either watch them live if I'm able to, or just sit there on my laptop and watch them on my laptop and put them onto my TV to make it just a little better. But it's just a very interesting story. And the next one up I've got to listen to is Jessica Soho, who is an award-winning journalist, and she shares her 40-year career in journalism, uncovering family history, genealogy, heritage, and untold stories that connect past and present. All of these people at Roots Tech have a story, and they are sharing their stories either from their personal perspective, or people who at the family history search have done the research and are telling them their story, revealing the story to them. So we're always talking about how to tell the story. And we've been talking about this for several weeks, a couple of months now. So today we're looking about how to write about ancestors respectfully, because respect preserves dignity across generations. Oh, excuse me. And some of the things you've got to look is avoid judgmental language. Describe actions without moralizing. Circumstances often influenced behavior. So you've got to look at the circumstances that they were in, what was going on in their life at the time, what conditions were they living in, what was going on in history as well at time. Acknowledge context and constraint. Limited opportunity, social norms, and survival pressures shaped decisions. Context softens harsh interpretation. So make sure you give it context. Put it into that period of time where the environmental surrounds that they were in, and their culture, and their religion, and their way of living, their occupation, and all of that sort of stuff. Make sure you put it into context so that you're not putting modern day stuff onto historical events and coming to a conclusion. No, you've got to put it in the context that it was in. Protect sensitive information thoughtfully. Some discoveries affect living relatives. Balance honesty with discretion. This is huge, 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 huge. On my tree, if anybody tries to look at my tree is marked private, but if anybody looks at my tree, any living person is marked as private. You can see that there might be some children there. You can't tell if they're male or female. You don't know their names. You don't know anything about them. It's just got private written on if they are living, which is really funny when you have an ancestor in there who's like 300 years old and they have a private written on there because you don't have their death date. So yeah, you do have some fun with that. So protect sensitive information. You may come across an article which could embarrass a living relative. Remember to use your discretion. Talk to them about it. There's things that I've come up with about some of my ancestors, and I'm just sort of like, it's not that I'm embarrassed to tell the story. I'm embarrassed for them, for what put them in that position for that to happen. And knowing the circumstances and who these people were when these things happened, there is no way I am putting that information. I will put that information into the genealogy records, just not as a public record for people to see. Even if the person has since died, it's not a thing I'm going to share. Use humanizing language. Refer to individuals as people, not just roles. So parent, sibling, neighbor carries more warmth than subject. Talk about your third great-grandfather, or put names in there if you want to, but you can still refer to them as your fourth great-grandfather, third great-grandfather. They're not just, and the subject was, or the person was, give them a title. Invite empathy rather than accusation. Frame stories around understanding rather than blame. And there is a lot of stuff that has happened in history that people today get upset about. Put that stuff into context. Don't put your that's putting your modern day beliefs onto historical events. That doesn't work. So frame stories around understanding rather than blame. Curiosity invites compassion. And the reason why all of this matters is to respect strengthens connection across generations. So your practical takeaway for today is write with empathy and historical awareness. If you want help crafting respectful narratives, send us a private message and let's get on a 30-minute discovery call and see how we can assist you. And our closing thought for today is honoring the past begins with how we tell it. And with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we will catch you guys back